Hey guys, what is going on today? Bojo here, back again for another NHL 18 video, where in today's video, we're going to be having another nice little discussion, and I brought along a very familiar face. Tougie is here yet again. How's it going, sir?
Well, I don't know if I'm a familiar face, but I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Well, glad to have you back once again. If you guys missed our first little collab video that we went over the things that they should change, EA specifically, about NHL 18 for NHL 19, I'll leave the link for that in the description down below so you guys can go check that out. But today, we are going to be doing another little discussion video. Who knows how long this is going to be, but we are going to be talking about the NHL Draft this past weekend, but most specifically, how these prospects are in NHL 18. How accurate are their potentials? How accurate are their overalls? Do we agree with them? Do we disagree with them? That is pretty much going to be the basis of this video. So if you guys wouldn't mind, make sure to go down to that like button down below. Make sure to hit it. Subscribe if you guys are new. Make sure to subscribe to Tougie as well. If you guys like franchise mode, for sure he is the person to check out in regards to that front. So before we start diving into all the prospects and what I did in regards to organizing these teams together, we're going to first start off with the roster update in and of itself. So Tougie, as you know, the players that we're going to be reviewing today have not been updated since April 10th of 2018. Need I remind you, today's date is June 24th. April 10th, 2018 is the last roster update. Online roster 5 is the last one that EA did into this game. So I want to know your thoughts, why this is the only roster update, or the last roster update of this game, and pretty much how it affects the way people play this game going forward after that.
As to why, I don't really have an answer. I don't know. It's been the trend for as long as I can remember, where April hits and that's it, we're done. And it doesn't make a ton of sense. And as we'll see with the numerous amount of prospects that we're going to talk about, it's infuriating, really, because it doesn't seem... I mean, at the very least for franchise mode, if you're going to play through, and I would imagine, for the most part, franchise mode drops off for most people, or at the at the very least, it leads into people going ahead and editing things on their own, and also leads to numerous complaints online. Or at the very least, it gets to lead people to videos like mine, where I spent 2.5 hours editing everything and putting it up into one video. Which that probably crazy, that's not that's not that's not to be like, hey, check out my channel, but that's kind of the point. Someone shouldn't have to go and search out, oh, what does this random YouTuber think should be changed? It should kind of just be a thing, especially if roster sharing isn't going to be a thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, because like it's a complete turnoff, because as we're going to show you guys, there's a lot of stuff that is not particularly accurate about a bunch of these guys, about a bunch of these prospects, and you'll see that because it's been 2 months since all of these players have been touched, and who knows, especially with all the rumors flying around and, you know, certain teams looking for certain needs at the draft, that could totally affect the way that some of these guys are looked at in the game and how other teams actually look at them in real life. There's like a really, really huge difference there. Okay, guys, so we're going to start diving into all of these fine young men that were drafted this past weekend and taking a look at these guys' stats in game. So as you guys will see, I basically took all of the players that are in this game, obviously excluding the NCAA guys, the KHL guys, the guys who I just couldn't find on this game at all, and I put them all on 5 different teams. And now I basically took teams 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as you'll see here, and listed them all off in a row as when they were drafted. So pretty much all the top forwards who were drafted are on like team 1, top, and you know, just follows up, etc. And goaltenders are a little bit weird because you can only put a max of, I think, 4. Actually, you can put way more than that, because draft teams 5 has a bunch of goalies, as you guys will see on here. It has 5, so I think 5 goalies was the maximum that I could put on there. I'm still missing 2 goaltenders. I'll get down. We'll go over that when we do get to draft team 5, but basically I just took as, you know, the max amount of players to fit an actual hockey team and put them onto the squad. So we're going to start with the defenders first on Draft Team 1 because that's where the #1 overall pick came from. So on Draft Team #1 for defensemen, we have Dahlin, Boqvist, Merkley, Smith, Bouchard, and Noah Dobson. 3 of which are elite, 2 top 4s, and 1 top 6. So Tougie, let me ask you this to start off. We know Dahlin, 78 overall, medium elite. I don't think many people would argue with that overall and potential. Do you agree?
That's the minimum, you know, that's the lowest overall you're going to see argued for. No doubt medium elite's fine. Someone might argue for high elite or maybe even medium franchise, but yeah, for the most part we're in agreement with that.
Anybody else on this list do you think doesn't really fit where their overall and potential as to where they were drafted?
The 2 in particular that jump out are Ryan Merkley and Noah Dobson. Now, Merkley and Boqvist, for that matter, are good examples of how EA, at the beginning of the year, just kind of go out and look at early reports and just say, okay, that is this guy's potential, and very rarely does it change. Now, Boqvist was in the top 5 pretty much up until around the time this roster update came out, and then beyond that is when, you know, injuries concerns popped up, and that's why he fell to Chicago in the NHL draft when he did. With Merkley, though, he's the great example of, it's been a while since he was projected to go anywhere near the top 10. So that's not a very good sign, at the very least, I'd say, for where he is and where he still is, where he's been with every roster update. And then, of course, Noah Dobson, for obvious reasons, being medium top 6. At the start of the year, I could see it, you know, when NHL 18 first came out, but he's someone who's continually gone up the draft board, and heading into the midterms, heading into April, and then as we got closer to the draft, of course, he was seen as pretty much a lock for the top 10. He fell just outside of it, of course, but those are the main 3 that I noticed, and the main 2 that come to mind, of course, are Merkley and Dobson for the potentials that they still have.
Yeah, I would agree. I also agree that just something like the overalls are like way too low in my opinion. Like 50 overalls, like for Bouchard and Dobson. Even Ty Smith I can understand maybe being like a 60, but Bouchard and Dobson being 56 and 52 is just that's way too damn low in my opinion.
I agree. And if you think of where, I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but before NHL 18 came out, they put out the overall blog post, and they talked about how a top 8 defenseman, so a depth defenseman, is a 75 overall. I don't know what an overall is, but a 75 overall. And you look at Dobson, from a 52 to a 75, it's going to take him quite a long time to get there, if ever. So even if his potential was a medium top 4 or even a medium elite, he's not going to get anywhere near there just because of how low that starting overall is.
All right, so let's move on now to the forwards here, and we got some pretty interesting names on this list, obviously. 3 elites, Svechnikov and Zadina, I agree with. Veleno, once again, when the date this came out, definitely is definitely controversial, I would say. I don't know if I agree with the medium elite. Even his overall is kind of a little bit suspect there at a 73. But those are the 3 guys who are elites. 1 top 6 in Rasmus Kupari. 3 top 9s, Lundstrom, Barrett Hayden, and Martin Kaut. 3 bottom 6s in Kokiniemi. I'm probably butchering the hell out of that. Dominic Bach and Dellandrea. And then 2 guys, Begrin and Foodie, AHL top 6s.
Joe Veleno's a good case of, again, just how infrequently this is updated. I mean, obviously, heading into this draft, if you talk even like a year or 2 ago, he was someone on the radar as, you know, okay, that's the guy we could see going top 10, but that's 2 years out. I mean, it's a running joke within the community how a bunch of certain YouTubers hate Joe Veleno. Just wanted to bring that up for no particular reason. Why not? Hey, X-Tech, how you doing? But yeah, with Veleno, I mean, nobody, still, he was projected, I believe on Bob McKenzie's board at the draft, was 14th. So, medium elite's a bit of a stretch. The overall's a bit of a stretch, meaning he's close to being NHL ready. Just, I mean, for all reasons that are very evident when you look at his potential and overall, you can just kind of see how much that hasn't been updated. Someone like Lundstrom was projected to be a first-round pick for a while. Barrett Hayton is a tremendous example, again, of someone like Dobson who slowly climbed up the ranks, and there was no attention given to him throughout the course of the year. Martin Kaut's another example of that as well. Kotkaniemi is perhaps the best example of that as well.
Yeah, I was gonna bring him up as well. Like, honestly, like, I kind of agree with his rating and overall, to be perfectly honest. Maybe like top 9, but overall, I think I would agree with that. If you change it from bottom 6 to top 9, I kind of would agree with that.
If we're talking start of the year, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. He's one of those guys, and I made the comparison quite a bit myself, just on YouTube and Twitter. I compare him to a Nico Hischier, where Nico Hischier wasn't supposed to go number 1 overall. He wasn't thought of a top 5 pick, and he just climbs up the draft board, ends up going number 1 overall. Same thing happened for Kotkaniemi. So while people thought it was an off-the-board pick for the time, it does make sense just for, you know, the season that he ended up having. If you want to talk about a Ty Dellandrea, though, that, you know, going to Dallas at, what, 13th? Then, yeah. I would say, you know, maybe a slight bump up is needed, but that's about it.
Yeah, even, like, Berggren, am I saying that right, or Berggren? Is it Berggren or Berggren?
I think it's Berggren, but I've heard, I mean, I'm familiar, I pay attention. Flat out, I had never heard of this guy prior to him being drafted. He's someone that I just completely missed. He was off the radar.
Yeah, so. but once again, like, AHL top 6, that's pretty rough. Same thing for Foodie, because he was taken by Columbus at when was Columbus's draft pick? Like, they were number they were
late teens, wasn't it?
18.
There you go. And so, he's, like, I mean, he's another great example of someone who climbed up the draft boards from about the midterm, you know, central scouting reports to the draft, and judging by the roster, no one really paid attention. So that's another, for centers here, I mean, or at least for forwards, there's some damning evidence about how much attention is paid to roster updates and prospects in particular from about September and onward, when you look at guys like Kotkaniemi, Hayton, Liam Foudy especially. And it is frustrating to have someone like Liam Foudy just, I mean, you're never going to see him in franchise mode. Not just for the overall, but the potential. And at the start of the year, I get it, because I don't think anyone at the start of the year was going to say Liam Foudy's going 18th. But this roster update came out in April, so
yeah, it's clear to show that these, even, you know, as we go further through these teams, it's pretty much evident that the roster updates are mainly centered on just fixing NHL team potentials, overalls, and team layouts than they are with any other, like, league in this game. They do tend to add, like, you know, the CHL players to teams, but it's very, very rarely that they're touching their potentials or overalls at all from when they immediately create them in the game. And then finally, for the goaltenders from Draft Team 1, we're really not going to spend too much time on here because there really isn't that great of goaltenders in this draft at all. But as Tougie was talking to me earlier, he said, just because I said that, the next Patrick Waugh is going to come out of this draft. But Justice and Noonan
to Pittsburgh to spurn both of us.
Exactly.
To spurn the entire NHL, because, you know, the Penguins need more success, right?
Yeah, of course they do. Noonan and Olivier Rodrigue, who I believe went to the Oilers, right?
Edmonton Oilers, indeed.
Yeah, I think he was the top-rated goaltender in this draft anyway, and AHL starter high. I mean, once again, it goes back to the thing, if they had more time, if they focused on these roster updates, you know, he would probably be, like, fringe starter, I would assume. Maybe even, like, backup potential.
Me personally, when I change the potentials coming out of this draft, I went medium fringe, which I feel like is fair. Goalies are complete voodoo, of course. I mean,
yeah,
you can, you know, every once in a while see a goalie go in the first round. A good example is Ottinger. He went to Dallas, what, last year? But
yeah,
for the most part, yeah. But again, it is a great example. I mean, both of them, of Rodrigue getting no attention, and Justice Annuin, who I've never been able to pronounce his name correctly, being one of the players at the start of the year, they're like, sure, this guy's going to do well, and he's going to go high in the draft, and then they never touch it again.
All right, so now we're going to move on to Dallas Draftees 2, which is obviously the team that I concocted out of my weird head. But these are mainly the players and the forwards that are now starting to get into like round 2, round 3 areas. And the thing that stands out most to me is the potentials of these players compared to the guys who are in round 1. So, to start off, we have 4 top 6 forwards immediately right out of the gate. In McLeod, Olivier Giroux, or Giroux, I don't know, it's a French name, Akil Thomas, and Sarah Noel for the top 6 guys. 3 top 9s, Olofsson, Gustafsson,
and people say I struggle
Yannick.
with French names.
2 bottom 6s, Cameron Hillis and Alban Eriksson. And then, once again, 3 AHL top 6s, Fortier, Philip Hollander, and Cody Clark. Now, if I had to, yeah, I mean, obviously, these 4 guys, the 4 top 6 guys, were immediately rated high overalls from that roster update back in April. So these guys were definitely on EA's radar early out of the gate. It's just crazy to see that, like, looking back on this, like, these guys' potentials, and they went in the 2nd round. Same thing with, like, the Swedes down here with Olofsson, Gustafsson, 2nd, 3rd round picks maybe. And even Olofsson, he's 60 overall. He's higher rated than some of the guys that went in the 1st round as well. So it's honestly, it's just pretty crazy looking at all these guys.
Yeah, and again, it's another example of, and it sucks to, you know, we're beating a dead horse here, and we're gonna have to keep banging the same drum over. Cody Clark, a great example of someone who, beyond the initial roster update, no attention, no love, as he climbed up the rankings and ended up being a 2nd round pick, and it is unfortunate. That's all I'll say. It's unfortunate.
All right, so now we'll move back onto the defenseman here. Jared McIsaac, medium top 4. Nicholas Baudin, high top 6. Rasmus Sandin, who got picked by the Leafs, medium top 6. Philippe Johansson, medium top 6. Alexander Alexiev, medium top 6. And then Niels Lundqvist, AHL top 2. I actually kind of, other than maybe McIsaac, who I think was, honestly, even with him, I kind of agree with most of these ratings and potentials here. I actually kind of do. Other than Lundqvist getting a bump up, you know what? I agree with most of these guys.
McIsaac, I understand. Just like Ryan McLeod and Sarah Noel, Akil Thomas, he's one of those guys at the start of the year who was expected to do well. So I understand that potential. Alexiev, someone who might have benefited more if this was, you know, given a little bit more attention. Baudin is absolutely an example of someone who at the start of the game they're like, yes, sure, this guy's going to be good. High top 6 is kind of a weird potential in the game anyway with the way franchise mode plays out, but I won't go on that rant about my thoughts on the potential system at the moment. That's for a different day. Sandin's another example. Lundqvist, another example. I don't know if anyone really expected Lundqvist to be a 1st round pick though for the Rangers. I think they just did it for the for the memes at this point. And Johansson as well. I understand it. I understand it. So.
And then, once again, the goaltender's position got fairly weak as the draft go on. It's basically just like a hit and miss with goaltenders at this point, in any NHL draft at this point. But Skarik and Eliasson, French starter, AHL starter, probably not going to deliberate on all too much on these guys. It's the goal when we'll get to draft team 5. That's when pretty much the only question with goaltenders comes up. So. To be honest, right now, it's basically just like a hit and miss with goaltenders. Unless it's somebody who's really well established and, you know, there's a lot of hype for bringing up a player like, I don't know, like a Carter Hart. All right, so now we move on to our 3rd team here. And to start off, Kovanov, Alexander Kovanov, the only top 6 guy from this one, 3rd round pick from the Minnesota Wild. And then we have a bunch more of these top 9 potentials, Riley Sutter, Oscar Bach or Bach, it's probably Bach, Nicholas Nordgren, Alan McShane, and Jacob Lauko. All those guys are top 9s. And then a bunch of AHL top 6s.
I like how you butchered the 2 Bruins prospects' names, by the way. Thanks for that.
But then Luke Henman, Marcus Kohlberg, Linus Karlsson, Connor Dewar, Riley Stotts, and know what? I'm not even gonna bother. I'm not even gonna bother with that.
You know, you're given a pass when even Steve Dangle looks at it on his review of the draft and just says,
I gave Benoit an abbreviation, so SDA is his abbreviation. Just gonna leave it at that.
If people aren't gonna give you a break on Guru, I think they'll give you a break with this guy. So I think you're okay. Notice how I'm also not giving it an attempt because I know.
Yeah, other than like the AHL top 6 guys who obviously could get like maybe a little bit of a boost here and there, maybe to like the bottom 6 as we get to this point. A couple of these guys obviously won't make the NHL. Probably will barely make AHL squads at this point as well as we get further and further down the draft. But it's just, once again, it's just interesting to look at where some of these guys in EA's update were viewed upon, especially Kovanov. Seems like Minnesota got a really good player there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's another one of those examples of someone who was relatively highly rated. I'm all right with the potential heading into the draft. I don't know if he was expected to fall to the 3rd round, and just yeah, it's more of the same, where you have some guys who might not have been projected to go that far.
Jet Wu and Adam Genning. Jet Wu medium top 4, Adam Genning low top 4. And then we have Sean Dursey, Martin Farabee, Kalen Addison, and Kevin Ball. All those guys are AHL top 2s.
Low top 4 for Jennings. I can see it as a little bit of optimism, perhaps. So view it that way. Maybe he finds more of an offensive style to his game and doesn't become just a stereotypical defensive D-man. With the rest, though, you know, someone like Sean Dursey I can understand because it was his 2nd year in the draft and he wasn't picked last year, so I kind of understand that potential. I'd personally make it, you know, slightly higher. Same for someone like Kevin Ball.
All these defensemen are second round picks,
Correct.
by the way. Pretty sure. Yeah, all these guys are second round picks.
I think, you know, the biggest name that jumps out to me, like Jet Wu, I agree with. You know, again, he was expected to be pretty good. And then you know, the one name for me that jumps off the page is you know, my player who they didn't give a damn about beyond September would be Kalen Addison.
And then if we take a look at the goaltenders real quick, once again, won't spend all too much on there. Mandalise and Joel Hofer, 53 overall, 48 overall, AHL starters. Once again, goalie draft wasn't good, so we'll just give EA the benefit of the doubt.
Aside from Mandalise being the 2nd rated North American goaltender, you might want to give him a little bit more credit than that, but I guess it becomes the argument of, are we surprised that he wasn't given a little bit more credit than that?
Probably not.
The answer is no.
All right, so now we move on to team number 4, and surprisingly enough, Tougie, the top-rated potential guy from this list, Adam Mascherin. He was already drafted once before.
Yes,
this is his 2nd time being drafted.
Panthers re-enters the draft and goes to Dallas this time out.
Yep, drafted by Florida.
The bane of every Florida Panthers fan, all 12 of them.
Yep, so he was top 9, as you guys can see right there, 2nd round pick, 38th overall in 2016. And they still had him as top 9 potential, even in this game up and until April, even when he obviously elected to go into the draft again. Milos Roman is the only other like decently potential guy in their bottom 6, and then everybody else is either high, medium, or low potential. So Fonstad, Kurashev, Demani, that guy, Laurie, that guy, Blake Jenkins, Brandon Sajan, Aiden Dundas.
Might I say, the best part of this for me is you having to read off these names.
Yep.
This has made it worth it. 100%.
Justin Almeida and Samuel Hootie and Curtis Douglas. So all these guys down here, AHL top 6s, either low, medium, or high at this point.
I guess the main argument for this, because some people might just be like, oh, well, who cares? It's a bunch of 3rd and 4th rounders. At the very least, though, to go back and have another roster update post-draft, or to at least pay more attention leading up to the final roster update in April, making some of these guys medium bottom 6, you know, medium top 6 defensemen, it at least gives them a chance to be somewhat usable in franchise mode. as opposed to what they're listed as, where you are never going to see them. Ever. I'm sorry. You use this roster update. You didn't know Almeida existed outside of the fact of, oh, he basically becomes... The name sounds familiar. Was he drafted? And then you have to Google whether or not he's actually a person, because otherwise you wouldn't see him. I am willing to bet I could go through a franchise mode right now. He wouldn't even be drafted. He'd be one of those people who goes immediately to the free agent list, retires, and is never to be heard from again.
I agree with you, because here's the thing. Like, say you start up on your example, you start up a franchise mode. Say somebody does exactly what you and I have done here, that we've taken all these guys and put them on teams. You see their potentials, and you know that they're going to be in that first-year draft. You're not going to pick them, because you already know what their potentials are going to be. There's no reason why you should ever pick any of these guys in that draft, especially using a roster update like this, because you would rather just go for like the EA-generated players in those drafts.
The first year especially, the first year especially, it's all about just, okay, can I find those steals from guys who are
because that's what that's what all franchise mode was based upon this year, is like being able, that's the one thing that they fixed from last year's game into this year's game, was being able to really get those good guys in later rounds of the draft. But you know, just looking at all these guys and knowing that they just got drafted this year, and you know, seeing their potentials like that, it's, you know, what's the point of taking them? And then, as I mentioned, guys, we'll just go over the defensemen real quick. Regula, Gross, Holloway, Bernard, and Ragnarsson. And Keane, all AHL top 2s, other than Keane, who's a low top 2. But once again, we're getting into like third round possibly, I think. Or are we still in second round here?
I think we're in fourth to fifth round territory with some of them.
Yeah, so we're getting into like possibly like fourth round of picks for defensemen, and then goaltenders, Bratstrom and Tendick are the only two goaltenders to fit on this list as well. One of which is a 20-year-old goaltender as well, which is interesting. So,
but I guess in a way that is the point of this video, is to just kind of hammer home that message of, I mean, if you're looking for players that were just drafted, you start up a new franchise mode, you're not going to see most of them. Ever. They're never going to be a factor in your franchise mode.
Alright guys, and then we finally move into the last team that we have set up here, the 5, which is going to list off the last forwards, defensemen, and goaltenders from this past draft. So we're getting into the pretty much last couple rounds here that I could find. So anybody from like 5, 6, and 7th rounds picks are going to be found in here. Johan Sodergran, top 9 potential, so he fits the bill of the theme of franchise mode this year, finding his stud late round. Trey Fix-Wolanski, he might get the award of favorite name.
My nomination for best name in the draft goes to Angus Crookshank.
Angus.
So well done, Angus. I want to shake your parents' hands.
It makes me want to.
They did a great job.
Makes me want a steak. Jermaine Lewin, who was, I believe, the first Jamaican-born player who was drafted. So, going on him. Sean Oudre, Eric Florchuk, and Matthias Laferriere, or Laferriere? Sure?
It's French. I can't help you with that.
Eric Florchuk got the winner of the Not Forgotten award.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yep. Last pick of the draft, right there. But, yeah, I would love to know how EA thought of Sodergran.
In fairness, he had 33 points in a 37-game season. So, I guess I can understand it.
Alright, and then finally on defensemen, obviously, as you guys can see here, I had to plug like a crap ton of defensemen on this list. Pretty sure I got every defense.
It's good enough.
I got pretty much every.
It's good enough that I can't see you scroll all the way down. Yeah. That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
So it's a mystery who some of these guys are.
Yeah, because I sent you the screenshots, so you're missing the last guy, I think, or the last 2 guys on this list. But Xavier Bouchard and Giovanni Volanti were the only 2 high-rated prospects down here in the bottom of the defensemen's list, both top 6s. Simon Johansson, 7th, and then all AHL top 2s right there. There's a Flyers draft pick right there. Wyatt Wiley, Feels like he should be in a Cartoon Network show. So yeah, there's all those overall guys there. And then finally the goaltenders. There were 2 goaltenders who I missed on this list, but they were the last 2 goaltenders in this draft. So I'll just sort this by goaltenders real quick. So the only 2 guys who are available who I couldn't pick were, I believe, Zachary on here. No, so Zachary Boothhiller and Cooey's on there. So Zachary Boothhiller and Milan Kluchek were the only 2 guys who I couldn't include on this last goalie list. But Alexis Gravel, medium potential for a starter. The only notable goaltender being picked here.
It's understandable, and of course I've brought up this point so many times now with guys like McLeod and Jet Wu. He was projected to be the #1 goaltender out of this draft. At the midterm from Central Scouting, he was the #1 goaltender, and he fell off. So I understand the rating for when this update came out, or, you know, for at least when they appeared to maybe stop focusing on it, I guess. But that said, if you kept up to date with it, you might have dropped him down to medium fringe. He ended up being selected behind guys like Rodrigue and ended up falling to 3 on Central Scouting as opposed to being at 1.
All right, guys, so that'll pretty much wrap it up there for our taking a look back at all of these prospects that were taken in this past weekend's draft and taking a look at their potentials and overalls all the way back in April. It's very, very interesting to look at. So once again, we've said it once, and I'm going to have Tougie say it one more time. What's your overview on these prospects? And once again, just the roster update in and of itself reflecting these guys.
How nice am I supposed to be? Because
you know what, it's the end here.
If
anybody stayed this long to watch the entire video, I feel they're deserving of a Tougie rant right now.
That's a fair point. It's ridiculous, and that's putting it nicely. I mean, for someone like me, like I said, to have made that video of, hey, here's all the changes, to get comments on a semi-daily basis, just constantly, are they adding in roster sharing just so that we don't have to worry about this? It's frustrating. That's all I can say. It's frustrating. I find it to be ridiculous. It doesn't help in terms of negating the they only care about Hut narrative. And I don't know. I would hope for the future, either there's a little bit more effort put in just in general, we may see an after draft update rather than it being, okay, it's April, we'll see you in September. Which also doesn't help avoid the narrative of every game's just a roster update. Or, you know, like I said, a post-draft update, roster sharing, just something to make people like me, which, yes, we exist, people who care about accurate rosters, people who care about having a little bit more of a realistic franchise experience, and people who care about, you know, or people who at least desire to not put in hours upon hours upon hours, I'm making myself sad, hours and hours of editing prospects and players and adding in players, which the adding in players I can understand, of course. You don't have the licenses to guys in the KHL or the NCAA, and that's fine. But it's everything else, and oh god, just stop me, please. Just stop.
It just makes playing, like, if you're somebody who likes to play franchise mode past April, if you want to keep playing NHL to hold you over till the next game. Say somebody who just watched this this draft this past weekend wants to go into NHL and they want to kind of recreate their team's draft this past weekend and be like, okay, I'm going to draft this guy. I mean, if he went in like the second round or the first round, he should have pretty good potential, right? Well, that's not really going to be the case if you're using the most recent roster update, and you have to, once again, do like Tougie said, update everything yourself if you want to have the most accurate thing. So I agree, they really should consider doing these roster updates a little bit more frequently and not stop at April, especially I especially just do something for the draft, either before the draft or after the draft. That's all I ask, is so that people who still want to have an enjoyable experience in franchise mode without having to do everything themselves can go back into there and have a pretty fairly accurate look at all these players and, you know, draft the way they want to draft in, or just draft accurately.
We're not arguing that having these prospects have more accurate overalls and potentials is the most important thing they need to fix. And I feel like whenever you talk about something that seems like it is a minor issue, but in a way it's not, because it does affect the way franchise mode plays out. And I think a great example would be in one of my more recent series where Ty Ronning, with the medium top 9 potential, became...
Did he make it out of camp, Tougie?
He did.
Did he make it out of camp, though?
He did, but only because I'm a leech of popular memes. But a good example is that he was like a 78, 79 overall, but with the way the morale system works, he made it up to, I think, an 85 or something like that. Eventually, he settled back down, but that's kind of the point, is with the way the morale system works, even if this unimportant prospect goes from or deemed unimportant prospect, the 3rd round pick, gets his potential changed in the roster update from an AHL to a medium top 9, he could actually have a factor and play a part within franchise mode. So that's why I tend to argue the point. But again, some people seem to think whenever someone argues for this that we're arguing that it needs to be like this is one, like on the list of things that need to be changed. This is number 1, and then number 6 is gameplay, and nothing else. Anything you want done, no, back burner, roster potentials. That's not what we're saying, but it does, you know, it's a big deal, kind of.
Thank you guys for watching. If you stayed through the whole thing, once again, make sure to go give Tougie a sub down below. He would really appreciate it. Give me a sub if you're watching this for the first time. I would really appreciate it, but we can definitely agree on that. There's a lot of players EA definitely got wrong for 100%. Even back in April, there were some players that shouldn't have been looked the way they were, but there are some players that EA definitely got 100% right, as we saw. I think it was, what, Draft Team 2, the defenseman, I think? They pretty much got almost exactly 100% right. So that's something that...
I think beyond Draft Team 1's defenseman, it started to get a little bit questionable.
The 3 guys that we cared about and people cared about in the most in this draft, I'd say they got 100% right. Elites, you know, questionable here and there, depending on people's opinions. I think they got right, but that's, you know, hopefully we can just pray in the future that we get something along the lines of rosters and, you know, either sharing or just more frequent roster updates. I think is something everybody would like in the future. So, thank you guys for watching. Once again, if you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe as always. And it's kind of turned into a podcast rather than the kind of short video, but you know what? Who cares? I'm still uploading it anyway.
You know, I looked at the time. And I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be fun. And to add to the editing, I will apologize for having to fix these earbuds every 5 seconds. If you could add a counter in the corner, that would be great. That would be tremendous. I really think that'd be next level.
I'll see what I can do. But thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.